there's nowhere to go. There's nothing we're searching.
You are listening to Behind the Mask with Diva with Depression.
Hello guys, I hope all is well. This is the Diva with Depression and I am so honored that you tuned in. Before I start, I'm going to let you know that today's topic may be triggering for some, so I'm giving you an opportunity to tune out. I don't usually do that, but I don't want anyone to be upset or offended by the content. So if suicide is a trigger for you, then please tune me out. I usually do this at the end of the show, but I'm going to give you these numbers beforehand. The suicide hotline is 800-273-8255. That's 273-TALK. And their website is www.suicidepreventionlifeline.org. The crisis text line is 741-741. You can text home or hello to 741-741. And their website is www.crisistextline.org. If you need help, please reach out to one of these organizations so you can have someone to talk to. I want to share something with you. Guess what? Every day, or at least every other day for the past 2 years, I've thought about death. Yes. And I get up, I've done podcasts, I've done interviews, I've done, submitted articles. I go about my everyday. But at night or even during the day when I'm laying here alone and not feeling well, I think about death. And that's something that we don't talk about enough. We keep hearing, we've heard in the past couple of weeks about a couple of high-profile suicides. We have Chesley Chris, we've had Regina King's son, we've had Kevin Ward in Washington. All of these high-profile suicides are being talked about, but we're not talking about the low-profile suicides. Suicide is indeed a pandemic in our Black and brown communities. And I don't know why people don't believe it, but suicide exists. It's something that we can't ignore anymore. The rates have increased heavily between 2019 and 2020. I can't even imagine the rates between 2021 and 2022, especially considering that we've been in a pandemic for the past 2 years. So I know that the numbers are higher than what I'm reporting right now. And it's alarming. It's alarming. And so in our communities, we push it on the back burner. We believe that, no one has a reason to die by suicide. We believe that it needs to be kept hush-hush. And like mental illness, this is not something that we can keep quiet about anymore because we're losing too many of our people, our family members. The highest rate among Blacks, 25 to 34, the highest rate of death is by suicide. And according to Time magazine, the suicide rates among Black youth and young adults have risen over the past 2 decades. 12 out of 14 Blacks ages 18 to 24 died by suicide in 2020. Isn't that alarming? We hear about the celebrity deaths and we ignore, what's really going on in our own homes, in our own communities. And if we don't talk about it, then it's easy to think that it's not a problem, but it is a problem. The 2019 Congressional Black Caucus said that Black men 15 to 24 are 4 times likely to die by suicide than Black women. That's another thing that we don't discuss. We don't discuss the high rate of mental illness and suicide in our Black men. And we have to stop ignoring that also. We have to start paying more attention to our men and get them to talk more and get them the help that they need. There's no reason to be ashamed of living with a mental illness. There's no reason to be ashamed of admitting that you're struggling. We all struggle. And being Black and brown in America, listen, that's a struggle all within itself. When you start adding everything else onto the pile, it's a wonder that, the rate is not 100% of us in our communities struggling with mental illness. So I'm ready to start the conversation, and I'm ready to share some of my story. I'm not going to share all of it because I'm not ready to tell everything yet, but I can use myself as an example of what it's like to live with suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation as a Black woman. I was talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't just this one friend. I've had this conversation with several people over the years since I started my platform, that they believe that suicide is selfish. And I always want to drill down, because I've heard that a lot. Like, why do you think that suicide is selfish? And so the answer is usually that the person that is dying by suicide is not thinking about those that they left behind. They're not thinking about their family. They're not thinking about their friends. So in one of my conversations, I said, well, let me play devil's advocate. Aren't you the selfish one who is expecting your loved one to exist in pain and discomfort and misery just to keep you happy? Do we ever think about it that way? You cannot imagine the pain that you have to be struggling with to think about ending your life. The pain is phenomenal. And it's not something that I've attempted, but I've come close. The feelings can become overwhelming, and there's no words to explain it. You can't explain to anyone that's not suffering how painful the suffering is. And I know people get frustrated because I can't put those feelings into words. And listen, it's frustrating for me because there's nothing more that I would like to do than to put a name to what I'm struggling with. But I talk to people every single day, and that is one of the things that's at the top of their list is I can't tell you how I'm feeling. Words like sad and empty and lost and hollow and numb, those words don't do the pain justice. So isn't that kind of selfish for you to expect someone to live in misery just to keep you happy? Still playing devil's advocate. When you have people that are terminally ill, people believe that measures should be in place to let them in their life comfortably so they're not living in pain anymore. Well, people with mental illness are living in pain too. And, there's no, medication. There's no one medication or painkiller that can numb what you're feeling. It's it leaves you speechless. And so, yes, I understand that you don't want to lose anyone. You don't want to lose a family member. You don't want to lose a friend because they add so much value to your life. But how much of a valuable life are they living? How do they feel? What are they experiencing? And so these are the conversations that we have to start having. There are many reasons why, I've experienced bullying from the second grade through school and even through adulthood. I mean, who are we kidding? There's adult bullies, abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. There's, racism, there's sexism, poverty. There are so many things that are going on in our lives that cause us pain. And sometimes we just feel like there's no way out, and there's no way forward. You can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can't feel that it's going to be okay. Nothing takes that away. And so when you have people that are living under these conditions, these are the conversations that you have to have. You have to listen to what they're really thinking and what they're really feeling, and try to work through it with them. If you value them, when you love someone, you have to take the whole package. You can't pick and choose what part you take. So if you feel that you love someone that much and you can't imagine life without them, then help them to lead a more valuable life. Excuse me. So that I always give you a Wikipedia or Google fact, and you often hear about suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation, and they're similar. Suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation are just thoughts of not being here anymore. They're not necessarily equal to mental illness. You don't have to have a mental illness to have suicidal thoughts. You could go through a tragedy. You could go through a loss. And you just don't want to be here anymore. Which was my case. But they haven't had a plan. You don't have a plan. Then there's passive suicidal thoughts and suicidal ideation, which means that you think about it. You just think about it in the frame of, I don't want to be here anymore. Or you're driving down the street and it's like, oh, well, what would happen if I let go of the wheel of this car? Or, what would happen if I took too many Tylenol, on this day? Or just passing thoughts about not being here anymore. If you have active suicidal thoughts, then that means that you're starting to plan. You have a plan in place. You're starting to, different people have different ways of sort of letting you know that these are the thoughts that are going through their minds. So people start giving stuff away. People start working on their will. They start to act different, maybe, either withdraw or maybe interact more, which would be their way of saying goodbye to the people that they love. So you just have to know the difference. Me personally, mine are passive. Mine have always been passive. Even when I was young, when I was going through different changes in school or at home, I would say, well, what would happen if I wasn't here? What would happen if I wasn't around? Or how would they feel, if I died tomorrow, and then as I got older and, excuse me, this is an emotional topic for me. As I got older and things started to become a little bit more difficult, then those feelings would increase. And, I remember during a period of postpartum depression with both of my children, just feeling like I can't do this again. I can't do this. Or, I'm all alone in this. And just what if I wasn't here anymore? But I never had a plan, and I never talked about it. I wouldn't talk about it in therapy, and it's not something that I ever talked about out loud because, number one, no one wants to hear that. And number two, I was ashamed, to think like that. And, I had healthy children. I had a decent job. I had a roof over my head. And, we're taught that when you have those things that you don't have any reason to think about ending your life. What the hell do you have to be sad about? What the hell do you have to be depressed about? And so I sort of stuffed those things in my mind. And I also, use my children. I sort of kept it at the forefront that I had to be here for my kids. And so, I still have those days, where it's like, oh gosh, I don't want to be here anymore. But then one of them would talk, or, I would look at them and I'd say, okay, well, you just have to push through and carry on to the next day. And even when I had my first breakdown in 2006, they were still passive. After I had my breakdown, I was in the psych ward for a week, and there was a woman that they brought in, and she didn't have any clothes on. She just had on her underclothes, and she was wrapped up, and they made her sleep on the floor in the hallway, and there were 2 nurses around her. And of course, this was my first time being in that type of environment, so I didn't understand what was going on. But I found out the next day that she had tried to take her life. And, part of me, I started crying because part of me felt so sad for her that she was hurting so much. But part of me, and I never said this out loud, but part of me was like, wow, she's very brave. How brave must you be to decide that I can't do this anymore and I'm going to take care of it, and many won't understand that way of thinking, but I've just felt that, she wanted peace and she did what she had to do to try to find her peace. And who was I? I mean, I was sitting there and I wasn't brave enough to go find my peace. I didn't know how to find my peace. And, I remember that thought vividly. And I think I still feel the same way today, when I hear of people that decide that they don't want to be here anymore, that they chose their peace over what someone else would think or how someone else would feel. But I continue to suppress those feelings, and that's with taking medications every day, and that's going to psychiatrists and therapists. That's something that I've never ever shared with a therapist, and I just kept pushing through. And I remember there were days when, when I was at my worst before my breakdown, that I would be driving to work, and I did a couple of times take my hand off the steering wheel. Or I would sit in the parking lot when I got to work and, just sit there and think, what if there was a way out of this? Because I hate this job. I hate existing. I hate me. And, those are passive feelings. I never wrote out a plan, but they're still strong feelings. And I know that I say this often, and I can't stress this enough. When your brain is fighting against you and the voices are screaming and hollering and everything is working against you, all you want is some peace. That's all you want, no matter how you get it. Some people say, I'm going to move to an island to get some peace, or some people say, I'm going to lock myself in the bathroom so the kids can't get to me so I can get some peace. And that's temporary. But imagine having a monster controlling your mind and squeezing your brain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You just want it to stop. And I went that way. I carried on that way for a long time. And then I lost my sister in 2018. And I didn't know what to do. I did not know what to do. She's younger than me. She was just the light in my life, and I had no idea how to cope with this. And she wasn't just my sister. She was also, auntie to my daughters. And her whole family was just a big part of my life, and so you have that. I had that going on. And then I was in a relationship that I knew I shouldn't have been in. And I was just lost. And the person that I was seeing at the time, after she passed away, he said to me, you're always talking, this depression shit, and, you're always talking about, suicide and taking your life or whatever. Why don't you just do it, instead of always talking about it, just do it. If that's what you want, just do it. And no one had ever said that to me before. And a couple of weeks later, I said, okay, I'm going to do it. My kids were grown, well, my oldest was grown and my youngest was, graduating from high school and going into college. And I knew that they were old enough to take care of each other. And that was the day that I said, I have a drawer full of pills, and I have enough medication in this drawer right here that if I pour them all out and take them all, I'd find my peace. Not only will I find my peace, I won't have the pain of grief anymore. I'll get to see my sister. I'll get to see my grandpa. I'll get to see my daddy. And life will be happier on the other side. And that was the first time, guys, that I decided that I was going to do it. And I don't know what stopped me. I believe that it was probably one of my kids breaking my train of thought. But I knew that I was in a danger zone. And I knew that if I didn't get help, or if I didn't say something out loud, then the next day or the next day or whatever, I would have gone through with it. And so I had my daughter drive me to the hospital, and I checked myself in. And that was the first time that I said out loud to a professional that I wanted to end my life. And I was so ashamed, and I'm still ashamed, and I'm still sort of embarrassed. But listen, that's where I'm at. That's where I was at. And that's where a lot of us are at. And this had nothing to do with, being selfish or not thinking about other people, because that's all I do is think about other people. I think part of my problem is that I'm always thinking about other people. But this time the pain was too much. And fast forward to the end of 2020 to now, every day, I think about not being here. I store my medications away from me, but I think about not being here. If my body is hurting, I just want to end that pain. If my headache is intense or my migraines come up, I think about not being here. When I'm laying here by myself, I'm all alone practically every day, I think about not being here. And the only difference is that now I do say something. I have 2 friends that I confide in, and I can say to them, it's not looking good right now. And, that's what goes to the mind of someone who's in pain and thinking about ending their life. So these are the uncomfortable conversations that we have to start having. These are the conversations that you have to start encouraging your loved ones to have, because being depressed and struggling with a mental illness and struggling with a chronic physical illness is hard, and it's tough, and the pain is intense. But if you know that you're not alone, if you know that you have people to talk to, or people that will, grab a cup of coffee with you, or, assure you that you're loved and that you're needed, even though sometimes those words can, feel empty. But sometimes just a simple I love you, or, I need you, or, just something that that your loved one needs to hear. It doesn't have to be a speech or anything, And if you feel that the person that you love is struggling with suicidal thoughts, then talk to them about it. Don't be cruel and say just do it, because we don't want to hear this shit anymore. But talk to them. What makes you feel that way? What can you change to quiet those thoughts? Do you need to change your environment? What can I buy for you? What do I need to do to quiet those thoughts? Have that conversation. Talking about suicide is not going to make anybody do the deed, and that's really an ignorant way of thinking, which is a widespread thought. Say it out loud. Listen, I feel like you're thinking about ending your life. What can we do to turn that around? Write it down. What are your thoughts? Why do you want to do it? How would you do it? Where would you do it? I think, the more that we get dirty talking about these things, the easier it will be for people to free their minds and feel better about themselves. I shouldn't be ashamed to share these things. I shouldn't be scared to share these things. I shouldn't be ridiculed for sharing these things. this is how I'm feeling. And my feelings are valid because no one is living this life but me. And I'm the only one that has to live with it. So if I'm feeling that way, then I'm allowed to feel that way. If your loved one is feeling that way, then they're allowed to feel that way. And you have to let them know that their feelings are valid. Hey, man, I understand that life is tough. I understand that not having a job is tough, or I understand that, not feeling loved is tough, or feeling lonely is tough, or feeling like you're not enough. What can I do? Can I help you find someone to talk to? If you feel like you're not up to that conversation, then help them find a professional to talk to. But please, please stop ignoring this crisis. And there's no age limit. We've seen in the past couple of months that 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds are being bullied and they're taking their lives. And, it's even harder for our babies because, unlike when I was younger, once you left school or the environment and went home and closed your door, there's no access. Now people have access to our babies 24 hours a day. So there's no age limit. When your children are not feeling well. When they're not acting the same. So have the conversation. Open the door. Let them know that there's nothing in this world that they should be ashamed of talking to you about. And that if they are ever feeling like this, that they should come to you so that you all can get help. Because being a caregiver is difficult also. So let this open a door to a family therapy environment. So you all know how to get help together. You all know how to interact together. But we have to be more open because we're losing too many. And there's no such thing as, oh, she had it all. Why would she do that? There's no such thing because there's millionaires that are miserable. There's as we see with all of these high profile cases, money, fame, none of it matters when you have that monster sitting on you, when you have that dark cloud hanging over you. None of it matters. None of it can bring you peace. And really, ultimately, that's what we're all looking for, is peace. I don't know about happiness, but peace. And there are some of us that will go to great lengths to find it. Because this is really a miserable way to live, to be honest with you. So, I want you to start talking more. I want you to find help. If you are the person that's feeling like I'm feeling, then reach out to professionals and get some help. If you feel like you've crossed the line, go to the hospital. All you have to do is go to the emergency room and let them know that you're having thoughts of harming yourself, and they will take you right away. And there's nothing to be ashamed of because we need you. And my intellectual mind knows that I'm needed here. I have a purpose here. It's just hard to drown out that voice. And so if you ever feel like you are at a stage where you just can't deal anymore, then please, please reach out to a professional. If you need help, of course, like I always say, reach out to me, and I can give you some links to try to find a professional. Find a confidant. Find one person that you trust. And you don't have to share intimate details. You don't have to go into, your whole story. Just let them know that, you're not feeling well. You're not feeling safe. And that's it. And that just opens the door. I know that it's hard. I can tell you that it's hard. Feeling hopeless and feeling lost is feeling unproductive. I'm at the stage where every day I feel like a loser because I'm not doing stuff. But these are all things that we're struggling with. And so if you feel that this is you or this is a loved one, then reach out to a professional. Go online, take a screening test. Google, we have Google. Google has everything now. Take a screening test, answer a couple of questions, and do what's necessary to make yourself feel better. I'm going to give you those numbers again. The suicide prevention hotline is 800-273-8255. And the crisis text line is 741-741. Thank you again for listening. I know I went a little longer today, but I just felt that this was an important conversation to have in light of everything that's going on in the world today. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. If you need to reach out to me, reach out to me. Thank you to Illuminated Technology for being our tech guru and getting us out there. And I hope that you all take care and stay well.
Sometimes realize there's nowhere to go.